What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the second album by rapper Waka Flocka Flame. Basically, this project is called Triple F Life, Friends, Fans, and Family, and it came out in the late spring of 2012. Thing about this particular album, I wasn't expecting this one to be a full-blown classic. I kind of thought that this one was lesser in previous years, but now I kind of realize that this is another hit album for Waka Flocka. I don't remember what I scored Flockaveli back in 2015, 9 years ago when I reviewed that one, but I would have to say nowadays I think the album is pretty much damn near. I would say that nowadays I pretty much feel like Flockaveli is damn near like a classic album, I would have to suppose. And Waka's had a number of other classic projects. I remember reviewing, when I reviewed Ferrari Boys last year with Gucci Mane, I remember giving that a 10 out of 10. And then I also gave like a 10 out of 10 to like Twin Towers 2, the collaboration mixtape that he did with Slim Duncan in late 2011. So there's been some hit projects from Waka Flocka Flame as far as that particularly has kind of happened. This one is no exception. So I definitely would have to say, out of like the early 2010s, I would definitely suppose this is a signature kind of album, definitely one that has a lot of boisterous kind of energy. I would definitely highly recommend getting the deluxe edition. Now, there's 18 songs on the Spotify deluxe, but there's also a super deluxe that has like 19 songs on there. That might be like the iTunes edition or something like that. But I'm reviewing the 18 song edition, so we'll get to some of these. But basically, this, like I was saying, this is a pretty classic album. The thing about this particular project is it still has some of that drill sound. Like, if folks thought that the drill sound kind of wore out after like Flockaveli, it really didn't. It was kind of expanded upon. But the thing about this particular project is this came out after his Waka Flocka's right hand man, Slim Duncan's death in late 2011. So the concept about it that really destroyed Waka Flocka Flame's morale back in those days. He was pretty severely hurt around that time. Just the aspect. I'm surprised this album actually came out in certain instances. I wonder if that would have happened today, if this album would have even come out in the first place, just in that sort of concept. But it is a pretty quality album. I'm glad that Waka Flocka decided to do it and that type of stuff, because it's definitely a pretty hit project, up there with Flockaveli, and just probably one of the better, if not one of the best, definitely one of the better, if not one of the best rap albums out of the early 2010s, between like 2010 and about 2013, 2014 or so. I definitely would have to say. And the thing about it is, the singles on here were about the same popularity as they were off of Flockaveli. Just didn't have a huge hit single like No Hands or something like that. But Waka Flocka got some polish on this particular project, so the singles are a little bit more glossy as far as that pitch kind of happens, but it retains some of that polish, some of that album. This album has some commercial album polish. It's not quite as street in its gutter as Flockaveli, but it does have some of that drill on there, and it also has some 2010s trap on here as well. So it's just a good amalgamation of all that. Just a pretty carnivorous and just blitzkrieg of an album, I'd have to say. Definitely off the chain in terms of energy. Waka Flocka is normally a pretty crazed individual, so it's just kind of a concept to look after. Just realizing that this is basically like a blitzed out album, just a great bunch of songs to get cranked to, get crunked to, and just overall things like that as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. So I definitely would recommend it. Just has high octane kind of energy. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles on this particular project. And to talk about that also, I'm going to be reviewing, this is the last Waka Flocka album that he did, but I would have to say that he does have a bunch of mixtapes, so I'm going to get to some more of these, but I would recommend checking out the Waka Flocka Flame playlist, where I have a bunch of his projects that I've reviewed. I'm going to get to some more of these this year and things like that, so we'll definitely get to some more of these, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about the singles. There were 3 of them. So basically, the first single is Round of Applause, and this has Drake on there. So Round of Applause is basically like a very stylish, kind of tempered nightclub fun of a song. I would have to say it's an upgrade in grace for Waka Flocka. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a very blitz kind of night. So this one's definitely a pretty high grade. This one's definitely a pretty high grade strip club type song, something like that. Just a very good night out, something of that sort. Just a real nice one to kind of get. Great song to kind of have for like some definite great song to kind of have for some danceish and just overall dance vibes as far as that pitch kind of have. Just some real good kind of high octane type energy to kind of get on here. I really like Waka Flocka's kind of high octane energy on this particular song. Drake has a pretty good cameo on this particular song. They both do good on this. This is a commercial song. This was produced by Lex Luger, who's the one who produced like Waka Flocka Flame's hit from Flockaveli, Hard in the Paint. He might have produced a couple other ones, but he's not on here. Lex Luger's not on this album that much, but this is a really excellent beat. This is not drill, but this is just a good classic kind of combination of a sound from Waka Flocka and Lex Luger as far as I can have, just to get some of those vintage vibes. So that's a definite nice one. One of the best songs on the album, I would definitely have to say. But this album's going to get a pretty rave score. This album's going to get a 10 out of 10, I'd have to say. We'll just go ahead and talk about some of these. So basically, the second single is I Don't Really Care, and this has Trey songs on there. This is kind of a glossy type one, where it's kind of an R&B type. I Don't Really Care is kind of commercial, but it has Trey songs on the hook to kind of have that commercial type vibe. But it is kind of a thuggish and rugged type song. So it just gets Trey songs on some more like rugged type vibes, more so than like the typical R&B type snaz that he's usually on other folks that like just in a more R&B type fashion, I'd have to say. But I Don't Really Care is like a more typical kind of drill sound from Flocka, just with like a commercial bite about it, I'd have to say. And it's just a nice, glitzy, kind of noisy hook to this song. And this song just has a nice glitzy kind of noisy hook on there. So this is a definite nice one. This is a real kind of carnivorous one. This is I really like the energy of this particular song. It just works pretty damn well as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's a real kind of I mean, this is a good fashion as to what Waka Flocka needed to do when he was starting to flesh out albums as far as that pitch kind of happened, because this sort of song was something that Flockaveli didn't really have. I'd have to say most of the songs on Flockaveli that were the singles were just kind of more street cuts and more rugged kind of ones. But I would have to say that this particular one, but I don't really care, has like some of that nightclub pizzazz and just a commercial bite with like drill mixed in. So it's a good concept. Waka Flocka and Trey songs are a pretty good combination, I have to suppose. So this is a nice one. It's real turned up, but it's also commercial. So just pay attention. That's commercial drill, I'd have to say. Get Low, the third single, is a pretty nice one. This has Nicki Minaj, Flo Rida, and Tyga on there to back up Flocka on this particular song. This is just a toned down but still glossy kind of night venue snazz of a song, I'd have to say. It's some EDM flash with like a more mellow wind down type mode, I would definitely feel like. So this is a song to kind of get ready to leave the club, something at like 1:45, 2:45 a.m. as the music starts to die down and people start to be buzzed and that type of stuff. And get ready to dip out in some of those type pitches as far as that kind of happens. Just a real nice one to kind of wind down and just get ready to leave as far as that pitch kind of goes. Really like this one. Just kind of a more mellow type one for an EDM song, kind of a minor EDM song. It's interesting for Flocka to kind of do some EDM on this because that pitch was huge in 2012 as far as that kind of happens. But Waka didn't really have like the high octane kind of energy. He just kind of put it into like a more just almost done with things, just getting ready to dip out, having some drinks in my system, talking to ladies, some of that type of stuff, just getting ready to leave, snag a lady, something like that, and just get ready to dip out as far as that pitch kind of happens just within that aspect. I just look after it, just kind of, I mean, yeah, it's just interesting, this kind of song just kind of being a lot more tone. I mean, this is one of the more commercial songs. This is probably Waka Flocka Flame's most commercial song, I'd have to say. It's a good pitch to kind of get this one. I would almost say in certain instances, it's not just wind down mode, but also probably something for like 6:37 type PM, something like that. If like the normal rugged Waka Flocka Flames a little bit more rougher for some folks, I'd have to say this is a good kind of commercial type song, kind of similar to the stuff that Nicki Minaj was doing in 2012 with songs like Starships and Pound the Alarm and some of those type ones. This is just pretty much like an almost, this song is a lot more vanilla and kind of affable Waka Flocka, I'd have to say, compared to some of the more carnivorous moments that he gets, whether it's even on this album or Flockaveli or his mixtapes or something like that. This is about as vanilla and straightforward as Waka Flocka kind of gets, but that's kind of the concept as to why some folks might have thought that he sold out, but he really didn't. I mean, this album is just chock full of drill, chock full of things like that, but this is just a nice one to kind of wind down and dip out as far as that kind of goes, is what I have to say. So the rest of this album, basically there's 17 songs on this particular album, and out of those 17 I wound up recommending to you 14, so it's pretty damn good. Like I was saying, this album's going to get a 10 out of 10, this would have to say, and stuff. So the 18th song on here would be Everything I Love, which has Future and Trouble on there, but there is a 19th song called Barry Bonds, which has ASAP and P Smurf on there. This would have to suppose. So it's an interesting concept about that one, but I'm not going to review that one. But I am going to go ahead and say, like, yeah, to talk about the 3 songs I didn't recommend on here, which would just be Power of My Pen, Triple F Live Outro, and Chin Up. All of these songs, Power of My Pen, Triple F Life Outro, and Chin Up, all these particular ones are just kind of more homely type ones and just kind of a lot more optimistic type ones. I feel like these songs are kind of necessary to kind of flesh out like Waka Flocka's songwriting style as far as that pitch kind of happens, but it just doesn't feel quite as affable as far as that market kind of goes. I definitely feel like this is a classic album. I'm not about to knock the score for these 3 songs, but I just look after it, just the pitch behind it. It just was not quite as compelling a convincing listen as far as that pitch kind of went to kind of happen. I kind of saw it as like the rest of this album just was so much more compelling when it just had the high octane kind of buzz. I mean, I know that these sorts of songs are necessary and they do have their valve for it just in particular, but the mood, I just feel like some of the more earnest and kind of homely moments just didn't really fit Waka on this particular project. He was at least improving in the concept of being able to do it, but this was just not the project to kind of see that as far as that kind of happened. But that's just kind of thing. So to talk about the rest of the songs in this particular project, like Flex is an almost song, but then I really do recommend, I'm still going to give this album a 10, but Flex is a song that was on Waka Flocka and Slim Duncan's Twin Towers project, and I reviewed that back in November. It's definitely a 10 out of 10 project also, I'd have to say, but Flex is a real nice one. This is like a stock hit from Twin Towers 2, like I was saying. It's just a glitzy and awake kind of night venue snazz of a song. It's just an overall nice one. So this one particularly kind of has like Travis Porter, who was a hit kind of rap group around that time, 2012, 2011. It has Slim Duncan on there, and then it also has another cat named Debo, who I'm eventually going to review I'm eventually going to review some more Slim Duncan and Debo stuff and some of those type folks. But I'd have to say this is a real nice one, just a real kind of glitzy kind of night flashing beat. This is a good stock kind of nightclub type pizzazz. Definitely recommend it. And I do recommend checking out Twin Towers too. That's a definite classic mixtape. So talk about some of these. Another highlight on here, definitely recommend the deluxe edition, but Inky's a pretty highlighted one. This has one of the best beats on the overall album, I'd have to say. This is like a vintage kind of leery two-step kind of night flash of a song, I'd have to say. This is definitely some mixtape Flocka, I would feel like, and it's just a great song to get cranked to, and it's just some strip club kind of jive that I definitely recommend. So this is just a nice highlighted one. This has Slim Duncan and Woo Da Kid on there, who I think Woo Da Kid for a little while was going to be like Slim Duncan's replacement after his sudden death. And I would definitely say I would have liked the concept of it, but I think Flocka, it's really, once again, it's really too bad that Flocka didn't put out more albums. For the longest time, like in 2013, 2014, he was going to drop an album called Flockaveli 2, but it just never surfaced. And in 2015, which I reviewed that project in 2015, he dropped Flockaveli 1.5, so that was kind of the in-between, but he never really put out Flockaveli 2, but there is some other stuff. This is definitely a classic project, like I was saying. You Ain't About That Life is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely kind of like a booming kind of nightclub glitz of a song, I'd have to say. This is a quotable from 2012, definitely. This is a pretty catchphrase that kind of popped up throughout 2012, 2013 as far as that pitch kind of happened. This is just a real talk song, and this is definitely a rowdy kind of turn-up cut, I would feel like. So this is just an overall highlighted one. Definitely like the instrumental in this particular song. It's a real nice one, just real kind of high glitz kind of energy type trap cut that just expands upon Flockaveli's sound, just really nails it quite well. I'd have to say this is just a nice kind of booming trap cut that just works extremely well. I'd have to suppose really excellent beat, real glitzy kind of nightclub production, pretty much like it's a real good nightclub pizzazz, I'd have to say. Everything I Love is the highlighted one. This has Future on there and a cat named Trouble, who I don't know, but Future's pretty good on here. This is basically like a pounding kind of trap pizzazz of a song, I'd have to say. This reminds me of Same Damn Time by Future, which was a hit around that time in 2012. This is kind of a fusion of mixtape Flocka and mixtape Future, I'd have to say. So this one has like the Future hook on there, just the high octane kind of strip club type energy that Future has on some of his mixtape type cuts, and it has the mixtape kind of trap and drill energy of Waka Flocka, who's normally pretty turned up. So this is just a nice kind of pounding one to get. This really works as like a good fusion of a song to kind of get on here. So this is one of the better ones. This is on the deluxe. So I definitely, once again, have to recommend the deluxe. Candy Paint and Gold Teeth is a pretty nice one. This has Bun B and Ludacris on there, which is a good combination. Waka Flocka definitely had a bigger budget on this particular album. He was able to get folks like Bun B, Ludacris, Drake, Nicki Minaj, Tyga, Flo Rida, some of those type folks, Plies, B.O.B., some of those type folks, Travis Porter, bunch of folks on here, Future even. There just were tons of folks on here. This is pretty glitzy type one. I'm just glad it worked pretty well because the concept of it is it didn't detract from Flocka's style, I'd have to say, and just overall expanded upon it, was able to make an evolution over Flockaveli and some of those type ones I would definitely have to suppose. So it's a good kind of pace, but Candy Paint and Gold Teeth is a nice highlight, like I was saying. This is like a lazy kind of summer heat of a song, I'd have to say. It's got some cruising vibes, definitely. It's just to get some grub and kind of late day outing pizzazz this song particularly kind of has. This is just one kind of cruising around in a vehicle, something like that, in a hoopty, something like that, Cadillac, something like that, just in like the night kind of pizzazz of just like 7 o'clock p.m. getting some Popeyes, something like that, just getting like a root beer, some of those type pitches as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of cruising around, just getting some grub and just kind of getting ready for some evening outings. I mean, this one's not as much like a full-blown kind of nightclub pizzazz. This one doesn't have to be as much of like a stepping out, but just kind of, maybe errands need to get done a little bit. Just kind of lazy, kind of just relax a bit, chillax a bit type tune, just within that pitch of just kind of slow creep. I mean, this is almost like a Texas tune, but it doesn't quite wholesomely feel like a Texas tune. It's just kind of a fusion of some of that type of sound that Waka Flocka did with his drill sound, but then to kind of have like some Texas kind of pitch and like a 6:30, 7:30, 8:15 type PM type pitch as far as that kind of happens. It's a real nice one to kind of get that. Fist Pump is a pretty nice one. This is probably one of my more favorite songs in this particular album. It was a surprise hit, I'd have to say. This has B.O.B. on the hook, and he does a great job. This is a great one on here. This is a glitzy, kind of fast-paced bar and night venue fun, I would definitely have to say. Definitely works for like some bar hopping. This is a fun song. It reminds me of like a Roscoe Dash hook. This song reminds me of like a Roscoe Dash hook, which is interesting because Roscoe Dash wasn't on this particular album, which is too bad. They had some good chemistry, but I do feel like B.O.B. is a pretty good replacement to Roscoe Dash, but they're both pretty good on these hooks, I'd have to say. And this is just like a vintage kind of crazy walk on this particular song. So this is a pretty crazy type one. Definitely like the pitch of this particular one. Another highlighted one is Rooster in My Rari. Definitely appreciate this one. This is like a gnarled kind of 2012 version of like classic Flocka. This is definitely like a gnarled kind of 2012 version of like classic Flockaveli drill. I'd have to say it's just an energetic and kind of manic and festive type song. I would definitely feel like this one. This really has some of that drill type vibe and expands upon it. Really does it well. This is the sort of sound that needed to happen throughout the rest of the early 2010s. I'd have to say definitely a good pitch to kind of get that one. Let Them Guns Blam is another highlight. This is like a menacing kind of piano snarl of a beat on there, I would definitely say. And this has a good kind of early 2010s trap like feel about it. And it's just this is a really kind of ghoulish and thuggish type hit, I would definitely feel like. And it's just some riveting times I would definitely describe this song as. This is kind of the concept at. This is a real nice kind of highlighted one. This is kind of like a haunting type one. Some of the stuff that Gucci Mane or folks like that would kind of do around that time. It's kind of a good haunting kind of pitch where it's something almost like 3-6 Mafia, almost just kind of almost like 3-6 Mafia in certain senses. So I would have to say it's a good, interesting song to get Meek Mill on. That's another cat that shows up on this particular project. Waka Flocka and Meek Mill do a pretty good job on here, but this is just a really haunting one. There's not a ton of haunting songs in this particular project. Not quite as haunting as Flockaveli was, but I would have to say it still has some of that drill on here. And this is just a good kind of like early 2010s trap cut that works pretty well. So there are some trap cuts on here. Lurkin is a pretty good highlight. This reminds me of like a Gucci Mane trap hit. I would definitely feel like this is like mixtape Flocka, definitely, and this is like a rugged kind of high octane times of a song, I would have to say, and it's just a great kind of get crunk hit. So this is definitely a pretty nice one. There's definitely like some highlighted trap cuts on here, or just trap cuts on here like Cash, Lurkin, and Let Them Guns Blam are some trap type cuts, and I'd say Rooster and My Rari and Cash and Clap are like some drill type ones, or Clap isn't one, but Rooster and My Rari and Cash are some drill type ones, I'd have to say that. And Rooster and My Rari and Cash are some drill type ones. There is kind of a mixture of some of these, particularly on here. The drill type sound is not as predominant as it was on Flockaveli, but there is some ones on here, and it definitely has a good assortment of enough of these to kind of get some of it. This has a good pitch and just getting an amalgamation of styles that all hit pretty heavily. And just the quality of it is just, and the quality of this particular project is just teaming, I'd have to say. So it's just a good concept to kind of get some of these. I don't know if I talked about this one, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it again if I didn't. I don't know if I talked about this particular song, but I'm going to talk about it again if I haven't. So this particular song is Cash, and this is just like a vintage kind of Flockaveli hit. I'd have to say it's similar to Hard in the Pain. I would definitely feel like it's just mixtape Flocka, and this just has some snarling kind of energetic drill about it. So this one, Cash is just vintage Flockaveli. Definitely reminds me of Hard in the Pain. I'd have to say just a real kind of standard drill type one that just works pretty heavily. I have to suppose if you like Waka Flocka, this should be an easy kind of highlighted one. This just feels like something that was produced by Lex Luger. I think it was produced by Southside. There's a number of Southside beats on here. He's a pretty good producer for Waka Flocka. He's shown up with him often enough, so this is just some good highlights to kind of get off here. So kind of the concept. And then I'd have to say I think that about takes care of it. Oh yeah, to talk about Clap. Clap's another one. This is like an oozing kind of haunting trap cut, I would definitely have to say. This is like a regular kind of nightclub times of a song, I would have to suppose. It's just a steadfast pace, and it's just a solid kind of dance cut. So this was just a good one. A little bit, I mean, this one kind of has like a more mid-pace kind of feel, but not quite as heavy as like some of these ones like Cash or Lurkin or Rooster and My Rari or some of those type ones, or I Don't Really Care, some of those type ones. But I would have to say it's just kind of a good kind of vanilla kind of trap type cut to kind of get on here. Just real kind of like mellow type one. Just a real kind of oozing kind of basic type one to kind of get for just a more regular type night as far as that pitch kind of have. It's definite nice one. Really, I do like the energy and the emphasis of these particular songs. So these are just some nice ones to kind of get. But that basically takes care of the album as far as that pitch kind of happens. I'd have to say basically 14 songs out of 17 on here. It gets a 10 out of 10. I talked about the 3 songs I didn't recommend. So that's the concept of it. The social score is going to get a 10 out of 10 also because the energy on this album is off the chain. It's just a bunch of things to talk about and rave about. Plenty of good nightclub, strip club kind of energy, dance club even. There's some commercial bite on here. There's some good night flash. Pretty much the only real thing that this album doesn't have is just makeshift, I'd have to suppose, but then I don't know how many folks would be expecting that from Waka Flocka Flame in the first place. This is kind of the concept about it, but I would have to say it does have some of that particular concept. I mean, I think in like minor senses, you could probably have some of this in like a straightforward kind of blue collar sense, but for the most part, I think Waka Flocka was kind of adapting to that sound more and more. Maybe by like his next couple albums, he would have done that more, but I just would have to say, apart from songs like Get Low, and maybe a little bit of like Fist Pump, I'd probably say that a lot of this is just, it's pretty much weekend life and recreational fare, but it's not like it's a bad thing. I mean, this album gets a 10 out of 10. I definitely, I suppose, this some great social snaps, some great songs for the ladies, things like that, some real kind of rave, high octane energy, just off the chain as far as that pitch kind of has, so some good stuff. In terms of the future, like Waka Flocka has put out plenty of mixtapes, so I'm going to get to some more of these as far as that pitch kind of happens. He hasn't put out any albums since this particular one from 2012. He talked about wanting to drop Flockaveli too, but I don't think it's ever going to come out, so this is kind of the thing about it. But I would have to say there's a number of hit projects, plenty of, you can check out the Waka Flocka playlist on my channel to find a bunch of reviews that are going to happen. There's going to be some more this year, some stuff like that. We're going to definitely get to some more of these, but this is a project I very highly recommend, and it's just another stock hit for Waka Flocka, and it has plenty of crazed energy and just overall some off the chain kind of mixtape kind of vibes.